Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up after the events of last episode, where John is completely going dark side, and by the time the team shows up, it's already too late. Nothing they say can sway him. Obviously, Astra and Spooner are above the Wave Rider where he is with Bishop. But the others try to talk John down, but he was just doing what he could to distract him. It's sad because it's like, even Gary be like, oh, this isn't you, John. But he's like, oh, just shut up, For him, it's like he's going to do whatever it takes to get his power back. Because for him, he even says the lines of like, right, I was never really a legend. Everything I've ever done has always been like me walking down this path alone, and I'm continuing to do that. He's always kind of isolated himself a little bit from the legends, which I think is an interesting thing. Like, that's always kind of bit like, even though he has been a part of the team, he's always treated himself as kind of a little separate because his path in life has always kind of made him walk it solo. So and anytime he's ever brought someone along that path, it's always ended up bad. So maybe on some level, not saying he's doing this consciously, but maybe on some subconscious level, John knows that if he ever brings anyone else down his path, like that dark path is for him and for him alone, and that no one else should take part in it, because if they do, they'll be just as lost and as damned as he is. Like I said, that's just like, I might be giving John too much credit, but maybe on some subconscious level he's thinking that, whether he realizes it or not. Probably not, but still. But I like that Astra ends up hiding herself and Spooner as like objects, and lo and behold, Spooner becomes a fork again. I love that. I guess that's just going to be her magical state, because I love that like Astra was a princess last time, and now in this case she's a globe. I just think it's funny how that works out. But John and Bishop working together, Bishop knowing like every alien language, is able to help him track down at what point in time the fountain of Imperium still existed. And it takes them to Odessa, Texas, 1925. And upon landing, they meet Astra as well as Spooner find a mysterious woman, and then it doesn't make any sense to Spooner, because she's like, why does this woman feel so familiar to me? Like, there's something there. It's like, I think she's my mom. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, then how is is your mom some alien, and that's why like she's actually been alive this entire time or something like that? Because aliens have a different life. Different aliens have different life expectancies in like humans. So I'm like, is that what's happening here? But then Spooner's thinking like, no, like maybe the reason why I couldn't find my mom is she was sent to the past and her mind was wiped. That's why like no matter where I searched on Earth, I could never find her because she's in the past. And I was like, interesting. That's kind of sad. It's actually really sad, because that meant like no matter how hard you tried, unless you met the legends, you never would have been given this opportunity. And so for her, she's more focused on tracking down her mom and staying with her mom, Gloria, rather than looking for John and Bishop, because Astra's like, that's the most important thing, which I think is so interesting, because it's like Astra, much like John, always kept her separation from the legends. Like, oh, I'm not trying to get mixed in, but it's like, right, she knows that this is bad news bears type of situations, that this is really, so it's like she has her moments of stepping up to be a hero as well. So it's like, we got to stop them. But obviously, Spooner's like, yeah, but if this was your mom, if you had a chance to see her one more time, like, wouldn't you take it? And Astra can't like stop Spooner, because for her it's like, right, I would give anything to see my mom again. Like, I've missed her for so long. She misses her mom too, so she'd give anything. So she understands what Spooner's going through. So obviously going there to Gloria's house, Spooner finds out like, wait, how long have you been here? It's like, after her husband died, she came here as a fresh start from El Salvador. And it's like, wait, so it's not like your memory's been wiped. You grew up here with your daughter. And it turns out that's the interesting development to this, that like Spooner's got this whole situation wrong. Like her entire life, she's thinking like, right, aliens abducted my mom. But it turns out she's actually from this point in history. She was flung to the future, not her mom. And John ended up hearing a humming in the forest while him and Bishop are looking for the fountain, and they come across mushrooms, and it turns out mushrooms is like, yeah, much later on Bishop's like, and later on humanity ends up finding out that mushrooms are aliens, and just like, wait, I've been eating aliens the entire time. Which is interesting because I find that funny just because, like, right, Resident Alien points out that octopuses are aliens, or have been the entire time. So it's funny that knowing this, it's like, oh, mushrooms are aliens. Oh, because there's nothing like them. So it's like, I love taking like weird things on planet Earth that we couldn't necessarily be like, oh, there's nothing else like it on Earth. It's like, oh, because it's an alien. That's so fascinating to think about. Which is kind of weird to think about, like, oh, I mean, I guess it'd be no different from, like, right, all the other, like, animals on Earth that we eat. So, like, us eating aliens, would that really be, like, out there? I mean, God, it's kind of weird to think about, too, because it's like, well, that could lead down a different route of conversation. But I thought that was fascinating, finding the stuff out about, Spooner and everything, and even John finding her. And at first, when he runs into her, the younger version of her, and he touches her, and he has this vision. I was like, at first I was like, wait, is she the fountain? And then we technically find out that's the case, because later on when John shows up at Gloria's place and ends up giving Spooner a look at her past / future, it turns out that night the dude that wants her mom's land, Doc, rode up with some guys, killed Gloria, and running into the woods, she found that grove light mushrooms and bled on it. And the Fountain of Imperium protected her and sent her to the future where she'd be safe. I was like, that's fascinating. So it's like a good, less evil version of like the Weeping Angels of in Doctor Who. So I thought that was interesting. But like, now that starts explaining everything about Spooner's situation. But I was like, right, she was young at the time, and I'm curious, like, maybe the teleportation was like, the time travel was meant to kind of keep her safe. Maybe growing up, like, it was such a traumatic situation because she did see her mom die, so like her brain like hid that away from her. So all she probably remembered is like her mom, the feeling of, and knowing her mom was taken from her, but she associated it with aliens. And now I guess it kind of explains her whole deal. It's like, okay, like, why she can understand aliens and stuff like that. Because at first I was like, that still doesn't explain, but it's like, it does. The Fountain of Imperium is an alien itself, so when it saved her, her kind of getting wrapped up in it must have like put like some of it must have kind of implanted itself inside of her. Maybe it was always meant to be like a part of it's meant to stay inside of her to keep her safe. So it's interesting too, because we end up finding out later on that the Fountain of Imperium was kind of sent here to Earth to protect it from invasive aliens. So now that kind of plays into like, right, that's why Spooner has that thing as well. Like, her maybe her like disdain for aliens, yes, it's a byproduct of her circumstances, because she just assumed like, aliens abducted my mom and me, and I can't find her, and they have my mom somewhere out there in the universe and the galaxy. But it's like, what if it's maybe on some level that instinct to like of invasive aliens, maybe that's why she's got that anti-alien aspect to her, is because of that too. Like, maybe it's kind of like the fountain inside of her speaking through her, being like, no, like, I'm gonna protect this planet from you. So that's even interesting to know on some like level. Like, it's kind of maybe the reason why she's as anti-alien as she kind of is in certain regards. So I think that's fascinating. But despite knowing all that, like, Spooner decides to help John, because for her it's like, it's a way to like, this way, if I stay here, if I let John get the fountain and whatnot, like, I can make sure that I can stay here and save my mom. Which Astra's like, no, like, we got to do the right thing, because it is a complicated thing of her doing that will change history. Because if they didn't have Spooner, they never would have been able to find Sarah. They would have never been able to stop all the aliens that have were scattered across time, so it would undo so much, everything that they went through this season. It would undo it, and a lot more people would die, and time would be massively screwed up. So that's the double-edged sword. But for Spooner, it's like she spent her entire life looking for her mom, and she's like, I didn't grow up the way you wanted me to. I grew up just angry and bitter. But it's like, if you're around, that means I could have a normal life with you. You know, John tried to spew that to her. It's like, yes, he's getting what he's wanting, what he wants, and that's a fountain, but he's trying to spin it like, yeah, but you win. It's a win-win. I get the fountain, you get to be with your mom. You never have to grow up without her. And, you know, and Astra gets that more than anyone. Like, if she could have her mom back, she wishes she could. But that's also the thing of, like, I don't know if, like, I was about to say, like, could it be losing her mom is a fixed point in time? It's like destiny and fate. It's like losing her mom put her on the path to be who she is now and become part of the legends. And even Astra being like, yeah, you're my friend. I'm like, oh, she never talks about any of the... It's like, yeah, they're a makeshift family, but I think, like, Spooner is the first real friend she has, because both of them had a screwed up childhood. Like, her circumstances of growing up in hell, and Spooner's circumstances of growing up, like, trying to, like, find her mom and everything. And it is kind of sad, like, the circumstances around each of their moms are kind of what led them to become the people they have. And now here they are, kind of the other side of their circumstances, kind of becoming the, you know, each one growing into a legend and becoming a hero in their own right, you know? So... And so that's why I think Astra clicks with her more than anyone else, is because, like, yeah, we had the most, like, messed up childhoods and the circumstances that made us who we are. But, that, you know, I think that's, like, the first true friend Astra's ever made is Spooner. So, and she's like, yeah, I don't want to lose my friend either, you know? But it's also, you know, but even Gloria being like, if you do so much good, then, like, you saving me could change all that. It's like, look at you, you've become so brave, and you know, you are exactly like, you are who you are because of this path you were set on. And she's like, I'm proud of who you become. I mean, look at, you're a time traveler, you know? So now it's a situation of seeing how Astra is going to take young Esperanza to the fountain so that she could be teleported away. But Spooner's going to stay here to try and protect her mom. It's like, you know, she lost her mom once and never wanted that to happen again. And so this time, you know, her mom was like, right, I don't want any bloodshed, before all of it was kind of announced. And I do like that Spooner did find another way. She, like, using the powers from the fountain, she's like, right, I'm making you feel what I felt, all the pain and all the anguish of having everything that you've ever loved taken away from you. And it scares Doc away, and it's like, this land will never be yours. I am my mother's daughter. I'm like, that's really sweet. And I liked this progression of Spooner's story, because at first you're kind of worried, like, oh, is it something evil? Like, because Spooner had been worried about that. Like, what if something's wrong with her? What if there's something evil there? And it's like, no, there's always been good in you. And you can make the argument it's like a combination of the fountain, but plus who she is at her foundation because of who her mom raised her to be, you know? So I thought that was so interesting. Because obviously it's like Astra kind of got that other side of a similar conversation with John, where it's like John was saying, like, would your mom really be proud of you? Like, you know, your mom would be rolling in her grave, like, the dark magic she spent so much time walking away from, you diving head first into it, learning it from me and everything. Because Astra's trying to stop John from going too far off the deep end. Because once he goes down this path, like, he'll do something so monumental he can't take it back. So, but he doesn't want to listen. Like, he's so consumed by his greed, because for him it's like, you understand better than anyone what it's like to feel powerless. And that goes back to it, it's his insecurities. It's like he's had magic for so long, and if I don't have it, who am I without it, you know? And his need, his insecurities, his need for the magic, his need to feel special, to be special. Because I think for him it's like, right, because probably being amongst the legends probably aggravates that even more, because it's like, here's a group of people who are special in their own right, and it's like, without my magic, like, who am I, you know? It's defined him for so long. I never even thought about it because I'm such an idiot, like, until, like, Bishop's like, oh, JC. I'm like, I never thought about the fact that your initials are JC. Just, I'm thinking too much about it, but I just thought that was interesting. Even calling, like, Jayco and stuff like that. But at the same time, the legends are trying to find their way to travel after the Wave Rider and get to John. But But more so, Mick is more concerned about his eggs, and it's like, oh, we can call Kayla, and it's like, oh, with that device, Gary, can you call Kayla? And it's like, oh, I'd never call her because she would never pick up. So basically, he's using the intergalactic version of like a social media, and he's posting a picture of Mick with like fake eggs, trying to be like, hey, here's Mick and the babies, to try and draw Kayla in, which I'm like, I do like that it's Zari that's kind of giving direction of like, okay, like this way, chin down, smiling, everything. I'm like, yeah, Zari would be the one to be able to kind of, create the perfect social media post. So they have to wait a little while because Earth's reception's not that good. But Kayla shows up, not too happy that they're fake babies, but it's also like, how did you survive? He's like, yeah, surviving childbirth and everything. And it's like, well, Bishop helped, but he also has the eggs, so let's work together. So obviously they arrive on the ship to get the eggs, but Bishop booby-trapped it so that, oh, you have a limited amount of time. It's like, man, I'm sure this would be an awesome time to have a speedster on board again. But they were able to grab most of the eggs, but there was still one left, and Mick gets caught by the bomb, which I think is interesting in many different levels. For one, shows that obviously he cares. Like, that's all he cares about is saving, because those are his children. But also, in that moment, he got consumed by the flame, which, like, obviously his circumstances with fire. So I think that's doubly interesting. Like, I hope Mick didn't die in it. I don't think he did. Hopefully, like, he was able to save the baby. But I do like that. Well, not like, but it's so interesting that this ending is nothing but bad plus bad plus bad. Because John thinks he's getting the upper hand on Bishop when they end up summoning the fountain, which manifests itself as like this very like giant, beautiful mushroom. And he, he ends up injecting the serum that Bishop made. But the moment Bishop was like, oh, you bastard, John, you stole it from me. It's like, he tampered with it. Like, I thought he was going to screw it over to make it so that he could become worthy and take all that power. But it's like, no, he just poisoned John. I'm assuming it's the same, like, alien poison that, like, ended up ultimately killing Sarah and stuff. Like, I'm sure it was probably that. But, yeah, it turns out he wants to destroy the, Fountain of Imperium. Luckily, Astra was able to get Spooner to it beforehand, and she was able to teleport away. And it's just, I guess, just in the the magicalness of it, John was kind of impressed. But I wonder on some level, was he kind of happy and like, yeah, like, well, I guess it was just kind of like, wow, this is a representation of what it can do. It teleported her across time and stuff like that. Once again, like, did it put her in that exact time frame because it knew what her destiny held, or was it just a random point in time, kind of like a weeping angel that it ended up choosing? It just whisked her away to somewhere she would be safe. But it is the thing of like, regardless of everything, it's like she will see her mom again. And I mean, it's like, look, they've been reunited. It took a long time, but they're reunited present day and stuff like that. So, well, not you get what I'm trying to say. So, but Bishop's whole plan was like, he's tried to save this planet twice, but it's like again and again humans getting away. So it's like, bump that. I'm getting rid of the one thing that's like the fountain was brought here by aliens that wanted to protect the Earth from any invasive aliens, like I brought up earlier. So it's, which immediately my brain starts going overdrive. I'm like, so then, well, I guess every time it's happened, maybe it's always been points in history where the fountain has kind of dried up and moved on or found like a human source. Like when it's in a human body, it can't do its job anymore. Because at first I was like, then what about the Dominators? What about the aliens that have... Because I was like, about to say, I was like, well, you can make the argument a lot of the Supergirl stuff was like on a different Earth. So like that didn't count. Maybe like the fountain only existed on this Earth, but also like this is a post-crisis situation, so I'm like, that could be changed. But I'm like, I'm still sure all that Dominator stuff still happened potentially. So I'm like, once again, we still don't know the full scope of what did happen, what hasn't happened. And I think a lot of the continuity we've come to know in certain regards had happened, even post-crisis on Infinite Earths. But it's just interesting to think about, like, right, so like how are a lot of the aliens allowed to, like, but like I said, maybe they just, interestingly enough, landed in points in time when the fountain was in a human host, so it didn't have the world protecting field that it has. But now that it's dead, like dead, not just in a human host, that means that no matter what point in time, aliens can come here and invade, because Bishop wants to basically make Earth rise from the ashes. Once an alien race comes and wipes all the humans out, then the Earth can be born anew, most likely in his image, obviously. So that's his way of like, oh, I saved the world by destroying it. And that's the only way, because like humans, if I've tried my way twice, it's just like humans just keep getting in the way, and it's just like it's not worth it anymore. So, and now John's hubris, his greed, his need for all of this has led him to this, to the point that he's killed the fountain, which has protected Earth. So his selfishness has gone beyond just killing him. It's also affected Spooner because she's tied to it as well. But Astra coming to John's aid despite everything, and it's like, John, like, hang on, like, tell me what to do. He's like, yeah, I'm out of tricks. And it's like, your mom would be so proud of you. He's like, you're my greatest failure, but also my greatest accomplishment, And it's like, because I guess John is like the closest thing she's kind of almost had like to a father figure, a mentor and stuff like that. He has been, in many cases, he tries to be a good influence, but he's been a bad influence in other cases. But it's like, right, seeing the person she cares about, who's almost like a father to her, dying like that, it's rough, And I think it's one of those instances of like, right, it's not until someone's gone that you realize like, wow, I never appreciate the fact that you are so important to me. And he's like, I killed the fountain, and then he ends up dying too, because now that he is worthy, he was tied to it as well. So it's not just him, it's not just Spooner that's dying either. By the time Nate and Zari get there, he's already gone. So like I said, it's a very depressing penultimate episode for the season. Something that kept crossing my mind was like, where's Behrad? But I guess it's like, right, again, I think the last time we heard from Behrad, he was off with their parents, and obviously communications were down, so maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe not. I also, like I said, it also answered the question I had of like, oh, is Kayla off doing something for Bishop? It's like, no, she had left. It's like, yeah, let Bishop do whatever he wants. Probably the moment she found out, like, right, when she knew that the babies were going to hatch like a while from now, obviously Bishop accelerated that timetable. But it's like she was probably going to come back to Earth and get the babies from Mick's exploded head or something like that. After he's already given birth and his head's going, like that's probably would have been like when she came back. So she was probably just out there in the space, just doing her thing until waiting. Keep probably staying in somewhat close enough proximity to hop back to Earth anytime she needed to. So, a lot of really, really interesting things. I'm curious to ultimately see, are we going to get some time travel stuff to undo this? Like, how much will be undone and how much will be kept in certain regards. It's going to be interesting to see. The next episode is the season finale, so I'm so fascinated to see how this plays out, how they stop Bishop, what is this going to be the big thing that happens? Well, because they would have to undo it if they mean to save John and Spooner. The question is, like, who would be the one to kind of reverse things? But also, it's like, because you would assume that this would be the thing. Well, because it probably is going to be a full-blown alien invasion now. That's probably going to be, like, the big thing, and stopping that this season will probably be, like, how the thing, because I was about to say, like, because if the fountain stays dead, that means it's open season on Earth, and that could still potentially be where things going forward to the next season, but I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see how the season finale plays out ultimately. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.